and I thank you very much for this opportunity. And I love these lightning talks because you have very little time to figure out how less I know. All right, so here I go. So I think Carolyn set the stage very nicely for my talk, and I know I'd have asked to really follow her her presentation. So really, once you have these beautiful biospecimens, how can we really carry forward into doing research, and what are the informatics tools that are necessary to really do this research? So what I thought I'd do today in the very short 4.5 minutes left is really present two storyboards. One is a research informatics example, and the other one is the recent work that we did with our pediatric group that I thought would be appealing to this group, which is more from a clinical care informatics standpoint. So here's the research storyboard that I wanted to present to you. What you see up top here is really standard clinical practice in breast cancer treatment. So a patient shows up with a lump in the breast, imaging studies are conducted, core needle biopsies to really extract the biospecimen to do various pathology reports, and then a treatment plan is decided for that particular patient. But that's not what happens today. And this is what happens today is the patient shows up after the core needle biopsy and the path report. We're asking a lot of interesting questions. Is there strong family history? Are there specific gene mutations? Are they BRCA1 and BRCA2 positive? You know, is there overexpression of certain genes? Are they at a high risk for recurrence before we really decide on these treatment plans? The problem is, many of these data sets come at our oncologists from multiple different directions. They are not integrated, they're not synchronized, they're not presented in user-friendly fashion so that the oncologist can very quickly, in the few minutes that they have when they're dealing with that patient, to really develop a treatment plan. So really the mission behind the work that I'm going to present to you here today at Georgetown University's Lombardi Cancer Center is how can we unite all this information and present them in useful, intelligent ways to the right user. So here's a quick example of a workflow from a research standpoint that we might want to follow. So now I'm going to go into a lot of detail on the research question here. It can be any research question, for example. So in this case it is, I want to identify better prognostic markers that will help me identify whether or not a patient is going to recur 5 years from now. This woman shows up with lump in her breast, is she going to recur? And can we devise better treatment plans? In order to answer that question and publish in that Nature journal, you have to create this particular workflow. So you need to do a study design, you need to collect clinical data, you need to perform tissue banking that Carolyn talked about, various molecular analysis, various systems biology analysis. How do you unite multiple omics information to really extract knowledge? And ultimately, drug discovery needs to happen. It's not sufficient for us to support this workflow alone. What we need to be able to support is really this feedback mechanism so that we can learn from prior studies. So challenges as an informatics person, really, how can we enable researchers and clinicians to perform this workflow that I just talked about? How do they do that today? They use Microsoft Excel or Access databases. This is reality. They do this today, in offices right next door to me. And we siloed, informatic systems, and you'll hire a postdoc or two who'll go away after 2 years and be scratching their head, oh my God, where's that 200 sample clinical data that I collected 5 years ago? Or you hire a graduate student and buy him a lot of pizzas. So we have constructed over the past 2 years a very compelling alternative for our clinical researchers at Georgetown. What we have done is really not to reinvent the wheel. We're not here to build something from ground up. Really, if there's a bioinformatic problem, somebody else is solving it out there. It used to be that if there's a problem, somebody has written a book about it, but today if there's a need, there's an iPhone app for it. So the first thing we do when we face a need is really go out and see who else has done this work. So when the mantra is integration for us, so integration. So we built this open source platform called GDOC, which stands for Georgetown Database of Cancer, and we have really combined open source and commercial platforms and integrated it so that there's a single one-stop shop for clinicians and researchers to access various tools. So essentially these are all different tools, and I'm going to details. You may recognize some of them. We are connecting laboratory information systems. We are connecting electronic health records. We use something called ARIA from Varian at Georgetown's Lombardi Cancer Center. We have some CABIC solutions that we have integrated. There's another open source platform called RedCap for clinical data collection from Vanderbilt. So anyway, the bottom line is really integration. And where there are gaps, we identify those novel areas where we have to do new development. But really, in most cases, it's mostly integration. So let me just quickly walk you through some screenshots of how one can perform the study, right? So the study design that we described, so our goal is to identify markers that can predict whether or not this woman is going to recur or not in the case of breast cancer. So here's a quick study, and the primary endpoint we are looking at is recurrence. right? So what are the tools that we can use instead of Access and instead of Excel to really do this study? And I've also annotated it with open or commercial platforms, so it'll stick in your minds in case you're interested in these platforms. RedCap for study design as well as clinical data collection. I'm not an expert in this tool. It took me 10 minutes to really construct this form for clinical data collection, so it's a really easy to use tool. See a Tissue, it's a See a Big tool that was one of the products that we installed throughout our cancer center for tracking over 4,000 biospecimens that have been collected in the past few years for cancer research. A lot of the omics tools, some of them are built by MIT where there are gaps, like I said, in the area of metabolomics. We develop our own tools. And there's a commercial product that we use called Ariadne Genomics Pathway Studio for performing various systems biology analysis, and there is open source and commercial platforms for drug discovery analysis. So once you identify targets, you then want to match them up with some small molecule libraries and look at the three-dimensional structures and where those small molecules bind to these proteins and so on. Wrapping up. So here's a quick screenshot, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but you'll see how we have realized this use case using GDoc. So you'll see various types of data that are coming in from those various other tools, but it's a single interface through which researchers and clinicians can access this information. Here is a clinical report on breast cancer data sets. Once you have analyzed them, you can look at molecular signatures, all from a single interface. It then connects to Ariadne Genomics' pathway tool, so you can look up pathway information, and then you can search literature. So once you've identified biomarkers, you then mine literature to see, of course, when I take my biomarkers from this breast cancer study and map them to literature, this is what I get. But I can apply some really cool filters and look for specific targets that are interesting to me. And finally then, I can match them up to small molecules, and we have a drug discovery program, and it helps us take our discovery research forward and also provide that feedback. Can I now design a newer study that can help really narrow down this list? So that was my research informatics, and really the take home is integrative platforms, data integration challenges still remain, and how you enable better data visualization so that we can quickly go from data to knowledge to that nature publication. Very, very quickly in the last 2 slides, this is a recent piece of work that we did with Lombardi's pediatric cancer research. Very similar problems. Some of us who come from the research informatics field think that the challenges are very different in the clinical area, but not really. A lot of challenges are very, very similar. So here's a storyboard. The pediatric care, of course, is a team discipline. So obviously there are multiple teams involved. So this is the medical world. So when a child is diagnosed with cancer, they go through this various life cycle diagnosis, treatment, and study of recurrence and supportive care. And these are the various specialists that provide various treatments at these different stages. So there needs to be this continuous communication between the child, the care team, and their real life world, which is their friends and family and teachers and so on. So our work really focused on communication challenges. So it's really hard for parents to have this conversation with the physician when they come in. Did they have bowel movement? So this is 4-year-old kid, going through chemotherapy, and did they have bowel movement? Are they coughing? So these are information that we can really use e-health technologies to collect information on a regular basis. So think about a mobile device where there are alerts that are set up. So every day the mother logs in and quickly says, Tommy had his bowel movement and he did not have his. So I think there is enormous opportunity here to use technology to enable communication in the pediatric care setting. And the only reason I put this up in the context of research data is really the challenges are very, very similar. I think we need to be looking at standards-based technologies. We need to be looking at interoperable solutions. We need to be looking at context-sensitive information through user-friendly portals. So you may want to say myocardial infarction in an EHR, but you may want to say heart attack in a PHR, in a personal health record. So really mapping the information between the different users is absolutely key, and we face this in the research informatics world as well. So I leave you, this is my last slide. I think just leave you with some thoughts and challenges that we all need to be thinking through in probably the next 10 years. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but these challenges still remain. Too many standards, siloed systems, context-sensitive information representation is key. Consumer health technologies and mobile devices are proliferating, and it's amazing if you look at the DC population, many of them are uninsured, but they all have access to iPhones. So, maybe that's a way to provide medical information to them as opposed to bringing them in and spending the dollars on the healthcare team. So that's something that people are looking at, and many, many more challenges. Once again, I want to thank you, and I hope I didn't go too much over time.